harmony and justice among men.
You are certainly enough of a political scientist to know that certain movements spring up in reaction to other movements. The labor movement, for instance, certain social welfare legislation. This did not spring full-blown from somebody's head, out of a vacuum. This was a reaction to certain abuses that were going on. Isn't that true, Ian?
Not always. It actually sprang up from the same source as the abuses. If by abuses you mean the legislation, which originally had been established to help industrialists, which was already a breach of complete free enterprise. If then, in reaction, labor leaders get together to initiate legislation to help labor, that is only acting on the same principle, namely, all parties agreeing that it is proper for the state to legislate in favor of one economic group or another. But what I'm saying is that nobody should have the right, neither employers nor employees, to use state compulsion and force.
But when you advocate completely unregulated economic life in which every man works for his own profit, you are asking, in a sense, for a devil-take-the-hindmost, dog-eat-dog society, and one of the main reasons for the growth of government controls was to fight the robber barons, to fight laissez-faire, in which the very people whom you admire the most, the hard-headed industrialists, the successful men, perverted the use of their power. Is that not true?
No, it isn't.
Oh.
This country was made not by robber barons, but by independent men, by industrialists who succeeded on sheer ability.
And having,
by ability, I mean without political force, help, or compulsion. But at the same time, there were men, industrialists, who did use government power as a club to help them against competitors. They were the original collectivists. Today, the liberals believe that that same compulsion should be used against the industrialists for the sake of workers. But the basic principle there is, should there be any compulsion? And the regulations are creating robber barons. They are creating capitalists with government help, which is the worst of all economic phenomena.
I think that you will agree with me when I say that you do not have a good deal of respect for the society in which you and I currently live. You think that we're going downhill fairly fast. Now, I would like you to think about this question, and you'll have a minute intermission to ponder it and then come back and answer it. Do you predict dictatorship and economic disaster for the United States if we continue on our present course? Do you? And we'll get Ayn Rand's answer in just a moment. And now back to our story. All right, Ayn Rand, what I'd like to know is this. Since you describe it as happening in your novel Atlas Shrugged, do you actually predict dictatorship and economic disaster for the United States?
If the present collectivist trend continues, if the present anti-reason philosophy continues, yes, that is the way the country is going. But I do not believe in historical determinism, and I do not believe that people have to go that way. Men have the free will to choose and to think. If they change their thinking, we do not have to go into dictatorship.
Yes, but how can you expect to reverse this trend when, as we've said, the country is run by majority rule through ballot, and that majority seems to prefer to vote for this modified welfare state?
Oh, I don't believe that. You know as well as I do that the majority today has no choice.
What do you mean?
The majority has never been offered a choice between controls and freedom.
How do you account for the fact that an almost overwhelming majority of the people who are regarded as our leading intellectuals and our leading industrialists, the men whom you seem to admire the most, the men with the muscle and the money, favor the modified capitalism that we have today?
Because it is an intellectual issue. Since they all believe in collectivism, they do favor it. But the majority of the people has never been given a choice. You know that both parties today are for socialism, in effect, for controls, and there is no party. There are no voices to offer an actual pro-capitalist, laissez-faire economic freedom and individualism. That is what this country needs today.
Isn't it possible that we all believe in it because we are all basically lonely people and we all understand that we are basically our brother's keepers?
You couldn't say that you really understand it because there is no way in which you could justify it. Nobody has ever given a reason why men should be their brother's keepers, and you've had every example, and you see the examples around you of men perishing by the attempt to be their brother's keepers.
You have no faith in anything?
Faith?
Only
No.
in your mind?
That is not faith. That is a conviction. That is not faith. That is a conviction. Yes, I have no faith at all. I only hold convictions.
Who are you, Ayn Rand? When I say that, I would like to know just a little bit of your vital statistics. You have an accent which is...
Russian.
Russian. You were born in Russia?
Yes.
Came here?
Oh, about 30 years ago.
And whence did this philosophy of yours come?
Out of my own mind, with the sole acknowledgement of a debt to Aristotle, who is the only philosopher that ever influenced me. I devised the rest of my philosophy myself.
Your parents, did they die in Russia, or did they come here to the United States?
No, I came here alone, and I don't know. I have no way of finding out whether they died or not.
You are married?
Yes.
Your husband, is he an industrialist?
No, he's an artist. His name is Frank O'Connor.
And he, not the
Paints.
writer? He
No,
paints.
not the writer.
And does he live from his painting?
He's just beginning to study painting. He
I
was
see.
a designer before.
Is he supported in his efforts by the state?
Most certainly not.
He's supported by you for the time being?
No, by his own work, actually, in the past.
Well, I know.
By me, if necessary, but that isn't quite necessary.
And there is no contradiction here in that you help him.
No, because you see, I am in love with him selfishly. It is to my own interest to help him if he ever needed it. I would not call that a sacrifice because I take selfish pleasure in it.
Let me put one specific case to you. Suppose under your system of self-sufficiency, one single corporation were to get a stranglehold on a vital product or a raw material, uranium, for instance, which might be vital for the national defense, and then would refuse to sell it to the government. Then what?
Under a free system, no one could acquire a monopoly on anything. If you look at economics and economic history, you will discover that all monopolies have been established with government help, with the help of franchises, subsidies, or any kind of government privileges. In free competition, no one could corner the market on a needed product.
Let's say there is a deposit.
History will support me.
There is a deposit of uranium in Nevada. It's the only one in the United States, and it's our only access to that. And for self-defense, we need this. Whereas, let's say, in the Soviet Union, the state is able to command that. And a kind of a strange man of strange beliefs got hold of this uranium and said, I will not sell this uranium to my government. He should not be able to be forced by the government, according to your philosophy, to sell that uranium.
But you realize that you are setting up an impossible fantasy. That is, if you're talking of any natural resource that is vitally needed, it could not become vitally needed if it were that scarce. Not scarce to the point where one man could control all of it. So long as, I'm using your example, if a natural resource exists in more than one place in the world, no one man is going to control it.
All right, let's take another. How do we build roads, sanitation facilities, hospitals, schools? If the government is not permitted to force, if you will, by vote, taxation, use your word, we have to depend upon the trickle-down theory, upon the noblesse oblige, the largesse.
I will answer you by asking you a question. Who pays for all those things?
All of us pay for these things.
When you admit that you want to take money by force from someone and ask me how are we going to build hospitals or roads, you admit that someone is producing the money, the wealth, that will make those roads possible. Now you have no right to tell the man who produced the wealth in what way you want him to spend it. If You need his money. You can obtain it only by his voluntary consent.
And you believe in the eventual goodwill of all human beings, or at least that top echelon of human beings, whom you believe will give willingly.
No goodwill is necessary, only self-interest.
Only
I believe in private roads, private post offices, private schools.
When industry breaks down momentarily, and there is unemployment, mass unemployment, we should not be permitted to get unemployment insurance. Social Security we do not need. Will depend upon the self-interest of these enlightened industrialists whom you so admire to take care of things when the economy needs a little lubrication and there are millions of people out of work.
Study economics. A free economy will not break down. All depressions are caused by government interference. And the cure is always offered so far to take more of the poisons that cause the disaster. Depressions are not a result of a free economy.
And one last question. We only have about a half a minute. How many Randists, you don't like the word, I beg your pardon.
Objectivists.
How many objectivists would you say there are in the United States?
It's hard to estimate, but I can tell you some figures. My best intellectual, Nathaniel Brandon, a young psychologist, is giving a series of lectures on my philosophy in New York. He has received 600 letters of inquiry within the month of January. He's giving these lectures, and the attendance is growing in geometrical proportion.
Ein, I'm sure that you have stimulated a good many people, more people than already have, to read your book, Atlas Shrugged, and The Fountainhead. And I'm equally sure they will be stimulated for the reading, indeed, if they do not agree.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be back in a moment with my personal footnote to the story of Ayn Rand. As we said at the outset, if Ayn Rand's ideas were ever to take hold, they would revolutionize the world. And to those who would reject her philosophy, Miss Rand hurls this challenge. She has said, for the past 2,000 years, the world has been dominated by other philosophies. Look around you. Consider the results. We thank Ayn Rand for adding her portrait to our gallery, one of the people other people are interested in. Mike Wallace, goodbye.